Okay, welcome back. Live and local all day. Chris Etheridge, Dothan Fire Department. And if you were with us yesterday, I don't know if you realized when you were talking at 4:30 yesterday afternoon, which feels like 5 minutes ago, right. We carried you live on TV.
Awesome.
So,
thank you.
One voice, one message from Dothan, Houston County, from the EMA Center, and really you're kind of the front man for that. So talk with us about where things stand right now, 6:49 on Wednesday morning. What's the status of everything?
Well, you know, looking at the forecast, we got a 5 a.m. update from Tallahassee Weather. Appears to have increased some of our wind probabilities and some of the duration. So we're upstaffing, had plans in place, so we're implementing those plans to upstaff at the fire department. Having talked with the police chief and the sheriff, they're upstaffing in patrol divisions as well to make sure that we've got a lot of resources on the road and available for our citizens as we can respond through the storm.
Gotcha. So I heard Steve Parrish, Dothan Police Chief, yesterday mentioned that there would be hundreds of officers on the roadway from that side of things. Fire department works a little bit different. You guys work 24 on, 24 off, if I'm not mistaken.
Traditionally, 24 on, 48 off.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, 24 on, 48 off. Right. But so how do you do that today? Because those crews will high five out the door, and then another crew would take that truck, right?
Right. So traditionally, yes. But what we've done is we keep 5 reserve apparatus. We run 8 engines front line and 2 ladder trucks, and we have 5 reserves. What we're doing today is A shift, as we call it, would be getting off at 7 o'clock this morning traditionally. Yeah. All of them will hold over this morning and fill those reserve trucks. So we have every seat on a fire truck will be filled through the day and evening tonight. We're looking at a 36-hour and a 48-hour staffing plan to make sure that we have all of the available resources available to respond through the Wiregrass. And
we just talked about this with Steve Hicks, City Manager of Donaldsonville. Folks in your role and in the fire department, you give your kids a kiss and say, I'll see you in a couple of days. Tell me about that side of it for the fire department and for the first responders. You know, you guys are out working it and leaving family at home. This takes a really strong mental, I guess, attitude to go out and do what you guys do.
It does. It's when we talk about all the time that it's not just a job, it truly is a calling. You've got to want to serve the citizens of our community. And it's not just police and fire. We forget oftentimes those utility workers.
Yes.
Our #1 problem that we're anticipating is widespread power outages. And that's the men and women that we're trusting to get in those bucket trucks and get back out there when we don't even want to be outside. When you and I would rather just cuddle up inside and watch the news, they're going to be in bucket trucks and restoring everyone's power. And not knowing how long they're going to be out there. This could be several days before power is restored. And that's something that Billy Mays, our electric director, Dothan Utilities director, wanted to make sure everyone understands. And this is a national standard, so Alabama Power, Wiregrass Electric follow the same standard. Those bucket trucks cannot operate when we have sustained winds over 35 miles an hour. So looking at later today, the forecast of having several hours greater than 35-mile-an-hour winds means nobody's going to be working on that power. We've got to have people in buckets removing limbs from power lines, cutting trees off of power lines, and then restoring those. So during that period, we can't have anyone in those trucks. So those will be pulled back for the safety of the linemen. So need the public to understand that this is going to be an extended power outage event, and don't need to call and report your power out every hour. We know that there's widespread outage. We're to call and report it. If you don't have automated outage management, if you're calling Dothan Utilities and you've not signed up for that yet, simply have your account number available. That will speed the process for everybody and reduce frustration by having your account number available when you call in. Yeah,
and you mentioned that number 35 miles an hour. For sustained winds, that's after midnight at least, right? I mean, the time frame, that's going to be a while. So, if your power goes out tonight, let's say 5:30 in the evening, you're going to have to make do.
That's right.
For
And
quite a while.
Additionally, we use a standard. NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, has established a standard that our fire trucks, because they're such big-bodied, broad-sided vehicles, do not respond in winds over 50 miles an hour sustained. Now, we don't look at gust, we look at sustained winds.
Yeah.
So there will be periods of time we anticipate through the day today that we will have to hold calls and not be able to respond fire trucks to those calls because of the danger to the members on those trucks. And, you know, injured responders and fire trucks laying on their sides don't help anyone.
That's certainly true. You know, a big year for Dothan Fire Department. You guys were tabbed as a ISO 1 rating. You're one of the best fire departments in the country. That's right. And you know, we appreciate and salute the entire department today. And so in a situation like that where those winds are sustained, because there will come a time today where that's going to happen.
That's right.
What do folks do in that situation? You just have to manage, right?
That's right. You call 911. I will personally be in the communications center working with our dispatchers, helping to make those determinations and prioritize calls. If we begin to hold calls, then we'll use what's called emergency medical dispatch. It's training that all of our dispatchers have to prioritize those calls, make sure that we get to the most critical calls first as quickly as we can. But having a chief officer from the fire department, paramedic there to help them make those decisions, I think is going to be paramount. Something Chief Williams, our fire chief, wants to make sure that we do is that we have all of the available resources there. And you know, you mentioned, you know, being a Class 1 department. That's all about the members, the men and women that are being held over at 7 o'clock this morning. We notified all of our members 2 days ago, come prepared to stay for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So when they left home, their wives, husbands, children knew that it could be a couple of days before they see them, and they're fully prepared to do that to serve our community.
Gotcha. Well, and again, thank you so much to our firefighters. Before we let you get out of here, because I know you got 100,000 things to do today.
That's right.
The message to folks at home from that EMA as a spokesperson, really,
right, for
emergency response in the Wiregrass today. What are we telling folks right now?
Number one, stay off of the roadways. There's no reason today to be out. If you have emergency needs and you have to get out, obviously, but no sightseeing, don't get out to see what's going on. Y'all do a tremendous job. All of our media partners are doing a tremendous job in putting reporters in harm's way to make sure people at home know what's going on. No reason to get on the road. You can see it right here on TV. If there's barricades in place, they're there for a reason. It's illegal to cross those barricades. Don't go around them. Don't cross any standing water. Although we're not anticipating a big rain event, there is that potential. And exercise patience. You should be supplied. You should have your water, non-perishable food, batteries, all of those things. Be self-sufficient for 72 hours. But exercise some patience. This is going to be a long event. We break it into phases. We're going to have a long response time frame and then a long recovery period that we're continuing our response to structural issues, trees down, power lines down, and then our electric companies getting out and restoring power for everyone. So patience is the number one key. And finally, if you have to leave your home seeking shelter, 211 can assist with that. They're doing a phenomenal job of getting folks checked in at Cornerstone Church on John D. Odom Road as the receiving point, then they get them out to the appropriate shelter. But let your family know, let someone know where you're going. Oftentimes in these types of incidents, we expend a lot of resources looking for someone who's completely safe in a shelter because no one knows where they're at and they believe that they're in their home. And of course, we assume that they are until proven otherwise. So simply letting someone know, hey, Ben, I'm at the shelter, I'm good. That saves a lot of resources oftentimes just to check in and let folks know where you're at. But understand, it is going to be a long time without power. Please try to exercise as much patience as possible.
Gotcha. Good advice this morning. And maybe you just leave a note. If you couldn't make a phone call, just simply leaving a note at the house.
Something to let folks know where you're at.
Yeah, just anything of the sort. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We appreciate you guys. Chris Etheridge, Deputy Chief of the Dothan Fire Department, and also really the point man, the front man for emergency management response. You'll see him on TV a lot over the next, 2 weeks
or so. Probably so.
Yeah, we'll be talking to you quite a bit. It is 6:58. We're going to kick things over to Mandy and Griffin this morning over in the Weather Center for the latest update. Good morning.
So, Ben, we have the latest National Hurricane Center advisory package that just came in. They have these updates that come in about every 3 hours, and the news, unfortunately, is still not great. It's still in the process of strengthening. So let's go ahead and take the graphics full, and we'll go over this latest advisory package. The winds now up to 145 miles per hour surrounding the center of the storm, and that makes it a high-end Category 4 hurricane. And there's still a little bit still a little bit of warm waters left for this thing to continue strengthening. It's moving north at 13 miles per hour. The pressure has dropped 4 millibars compared to the last advisory, so 933 millibars. That is now the minimum central pressure. It is about a little less than 90 miles to the southwest of Panama City, and you see a lot of these really intense bands of heavy rain now starting to come ashore in the Florida Panhandle and right up here in the Wiregrass as well. Zooming in a little bit closer, all along the Highway 84 corridor going from Cairo all the way over to Andalusia. We've got these bands of heavy rain that have now started to come in, and this is basically how the rest of the day is going to be. It's going to be non-stop bands of heavy rain that are going to be progressing from east to west and gradually lifting northward as we move into the afternoon hours. And on our next rad reflectivity, the heavier rain now is in our Florida counties throughout most of Jackson County as well as parts of Washington County. We've got some bands of heavy rain falling here. Of course, they're closer to the coast, so they're closer to the center storm where it's a bit more stronger. And just some lighter rain in our northern counties near places like Troy and Eufaula, kind of getting a break from the rain now. Those outer bands have not made it that far north just yet, but we're going to be waiting on those to come through. Let's talk about the tornado possibility that we'll likely run into today. The greatest tornado threat is likely to be south and to the east of us, mainly along the I-10 corridor going from Tallahassee all the way over to Jacksonville and places like Valdosta in southern Georgia in that 5% risk area issued by the Storm Prediction Center, and the convective outlook matches that fairly well. So we technically have a tornado watch for our counties in Georgia as well as a couple of our counties in Florida, and the reason for that is because they're kind of on the fringe area where it kind of goes from a marginal to a slight risk. So spin-up tornadoes are not necessarily going to be the biggest problem that we run into. It's just going to be those really intense straight-line winds that are going to be in association with the hurricane itself. And the center of the storm is likely to pass through more than likely right over top of Highway 231 and Highway 84, right along the where the three states meet at that tri-point where we have Alabama, Georgia, and Florida all come together. So we've got hurricane warnings in effect for what looks like Dale County, Henry County, Geneva, and Houston counties in Alabama. These are the areas that are likely to see hurricane force wind gusts on the order of 75 miles per hour later tonight, which is certainly enough to knock down trees and power lines. All of our counties in Georgia under that hurricane warning, and all of our counties in Florida under that hurricane warning as well. So the latest wind speed measurements right now are not that impressive yet, but keep in mind these are going to be going up progressively, slowly throughout the day. So it's 7 o'clock in the morning now. I think by the time we get to 12 o'clock in the afternoon, these should be up to tropical storm force winds. So here's our latest model forecast. There you go. Right around 12:15 p.m. you see 38 to 45 miles per hour showing up there in Bonifay and Mariana. These winds coming out of the east. The good news is, if there is any good news, will likely be on the left-hand side of the circulation where the spin-up tornado threat is not going to be as high. And notice how quickly the wind speeds drop off. You go from 67 miles per hour in Bonifay down to 32 miles per hour in Troy. So it really makes a big difference, Mandy, how close you are in proximity to the storm. And that can be a little bit difficult to convey because, you know, locally speaking, the impacts are going to vary widely.
Right, and that's what you're saying. You know, in Troy, a lot of people are asking that too about Troy and even west is Covington County. Those places getting more of that tropical storm force wind, not technically the hurricane wind, but you can see on that map that you just did see, and the one behind me as well, you can see the difference in just a couple, or not a couple miles, but several miles as far as in the Wiregrass from Troy. You know, 45-minute drive to Troy, and like you said, you know, on the western side, the biggest threat is not going to be the tornadoes. That's mainly going to be on the eastern side. But another thing to remember with even though the tornado threat is very, very low, with these hurricanes, they're often just come very quickly and just quick will spin up tornadoes with little warning.
They're very short-lived, and that's going to be, if we do run into tornado warnings, it's going to be difficult for us because it's basically like playing a game of whack-a-mole in terms of finding the warning and localizing where that that best velocity couplet will be. So for now, we're just seeing passing showers. That tornado threat maybe not coming in until this afternoon and this evening, luckily, if there is anything, because keep in mind we're on that kind of border area between the marginal risk and the slight risk right here in Dothan.
Right, so the good news is that is a low end risk for the tornado warnings. But again, like we've been stressing though, we're still going to have the straight line winds like he was talking about, so that's why we can't stress enough if you are in a mobile home or something like that, that you want to go to those, take that shelter, maybe go to one of the shelters that are open, or like I said, find a friend who maybe has a sturdy home or something, that are a neighbor that you could go to as well.
By and large, yeah, the biggest problem is the straight line winds that we'll run into. I think power outages will certainly be the biggest problem. And with events like this, it's not necessarily, it could not necessarily be the storm itself, but the aftermath that could be the biggest problem. Thankfully, we'll have a cold front that comes through, so it's not going to be excessively hot after the storm. So
yes, if your power gets knocked out, and you don't have your AC.
You don't have to worry about your AC nearly as much, but certainly this could definitely cause a lot of problems across most of the wiregrass in the form of power outages. For now, let me take it back to the graphics real quick. We'll talk about the rainfall forecast. Again, wind speeds likely maxing out from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. this afternoon and this evening. There's the center of the storm that you see there, likely passing through Miller County, it looks like, and then that lifts to the northeast up into south central Georgia. Still seeing likely tropical storm force winds as late as midnight. Storm eventually subsiding by early tomorrow morning. Here's the latest rainfall forecast from our in-house computer model. Those highest rainfall amounts appear to be localized near places like Donaldsonville, Mariana, Bonifay, and possibly Dothan. We likely see rainfall amounts in the order of 5 to 6 inches because we're going to be close in proximity to the center of the storm where the moisture is at its highest and the winds are at their strongest. So that is another problem we'll have to we're going to likely see is possibly some flooding on roadways and in low-lying areas, which of course is why we've been emphasizing if you need to take plans or if you need to get any last-minute preparations in, now is the time to do it.
Now, yes, our cutoff time, we're saying our cutoff time is lunchtime, so this morning is a good time to go ahead. If you have to be on the roadways today, go ahead and get it done this morning, last-minute grocery shopping or anything that you might need to do, running errands or anything like that, because after 12 o'clock, roughly around lunchtime, things are going to start to quickly deteriorate for that. And like I said, you know, you don't want to be on the roadways when this flooding happens on the roadways, because we kind of talked about this yesterday. Of course, it only takes a little bit of water really to lift a car, and hopefully we won't get that much. I think it takes about 2 feet really to lift a car, so hopefully we won't get that much. But
generally what it takes to lift a vehicle, but
there are some low spots.
Yeah, there are low spots, and if you're not on the road, you don't have to worry about that. So the best advice we can give is once we hit that cutoff time at lunchtime, just sit in your homes and just wait for this thing to pass, because it's going to be one of the situations where you just have to wait it out. This wasn't a situation where we necessarily needed to evacuate ahead of time. That was mostly for people along the coast, but for us, as long as you're in an interior room and away from doors and windows, you got to treat it just like a severe weather event. As long as you're kind of a safe distance away from a lot of the brunt end of the storm, you're going to be fine. And as long as you're not caught on the roads.
And a lot of the evacuations are, you know, more in the coastal communities because they have that storm surge, the threat of the storm surge, which we don't have that here. And for some of you, if you don't know what the storm surge is, it's that circulation caused in the water by the hurricane. And of course, in the deep waters of the ocean, that's fine. But once it, you know, comes towards the beach or towards sea level there, that's when it hits that land and it has nowhere to go, and it's just pushed up onto the beach and onto you know, land there, and that's where we have the storm surge threat for people who live near the beach and near the water.
Right, and one more thing, I'll go take the graphics full one more time if we can. I want to talk about that fact that we do have a flash flood watch in effect for all of our counties in southeast Alabama. So like we've been talking about, even though it's not going to be primarily a flash flooding event, flash flooding is still possible because these bands of rain that have started now are going to be with us until likely midnight tonight. That's likely how long it's going to last. And even though the rain is not necessarily very heavy, relatively speaking, it's just going to be doing it for on and on and on. It's going to be raining consistently throughout the day. We also have that tornado watch, which is in effect for the counties that we talked about in Georgia and Florida, where we have that best possibility of maybe a couple of spin-up tornadoes.
Yep.
So we will we'll go over everything that we just talked about in another recap of the forecast coming up in just a few minutes. But for now, I'll go ahead and toss it back over to you guys.
All right, thank you so much, Griffin and Mandy. I want to point something out to you. I have a telephone here in my hands, and this is about the time I normally wake up every day. My phone says right now, "Good morning. There's a thunderstorm today." That's not the case. There is much more than a thunderstorm. Yeah, it's currently 77 degrees. The high will be 78. I say all of this to say this. All right. You have so many trained meteorologists right here in the Dothan market, talent on our channel, and we'll salute the other channels as well. There are trained meteorologists all over the place. Don't rely on this.
No.
Turn the television on.
What app is that?
And download an app. This is just the phone itself saying that.
Okay.
It's not even an app. It's just the installed weather app. Don't live your life that way, friends. Download the WDHN weather app. If you need an alert sent to your phone, we'll do that for you. We will do that for you. We have paid professionals here at every station in town, even. You know, and this is just for you. All right. So this thing says, if you had been living under a rock and picked your phone up this morning and go, I might need an umbrella today. That's not the case. You need to stay inside today. You don't need to go to work. There's much more than a thunderstorm. So, you know, we do want you to keep that in mind. A couple of things we're going to do here. Let's go ahead and roll the video, guys. Power trucks this morning all over the place. This is Volt Electric Company. This is just one of many. I mean, they're all the hotels are housing power companies. You know, the old adage goes, my dad's an Alabama power guy. He's worked at Farley Nuclear Plant for almost, yeah, almost four, I guess, how long has he been? 4 decades now. So, you know,
As long as we've been alive.
Well, longer than me. And you too. You always say salute your linemen, and so that these are the folks out on the front lines. They're getting ready. They're coming in. They come from all kinds of different companies. The partnerships between the power companies is really unreal. You know, they send linemen from all parts of the country into the affected areas. And we do the same thing. Wiregrass Electric, who we have a great partnership here with at News 18, Brad Kimbrough and folks, they load them up, send them out. We had local crews working on Hurricane Florence impacts in the Carolinas and on the East Coast. And Dothan Utilities sends folks out as well. And so it's really neat. The American spirit is alive and well in events like this where you see all these linemen from different companies working together.
Yeah, I was going to say that. That's one of the things that I love when we do have an event like this. The community really comes together and really shows off, and the power of community and teams up together to get things done, and that's always been impressive. I'm not originally from the Wiregrass. I've been here almost 2 decades. So
but you're a South Alabama girl for life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But they always do a phenomenal job, and we appreciate all of our first responders. And as Chris Atheridge was saying just a few moments ago, you know, exercise patience, please, if your power does go out, for sure. Yeah,
it sounds like we're in one of these rain bands moving through right now here at
probably hear it at home.
What I call world headquarters of News 18. We have Mike Gerspan and Courtney Chandler on the west side of town at our temporary bureau set up today over at the Visit Dothan office on the west side. So I understand they're moving around right now, so let's not go to them. But we will.
We've got several questions, but we probably want to go to break.
Yeah, I think we do. It's 11 minutes past 7 o'clock, so we'll take a quick break and come back. We're answering your questions. There's a post on our Facebook page, WDHN News. You can leave a comment on there. We'll answer it right here on TV for you. We're also on the website, on the app. We have a news app, a weather app. Download them both. You're going to need them the next couple of days. And we're taking your questions live on air. Stay with us. You're watching team coverage all day of Hurricane Michael. Stay with us.